So Washington State functions very differently than the rest of the nation when it comes to buying and selling property, as well as the realtor's responsibility to their clients. I'm going to walk you through both things. You're going to be shocked to hear some of the things we are not required to tell you as a home buyer walking into your new home. So the first thing is when you are purchasing a home, you are not required to be disclosed a couple different things. The first of that is if there are any murders in the home. So that might be surprising for some of you coming over from other areas because that is actually required to be disclosed. But if a seller has a home that somebody was murdered in or maybe passed on in, they are not required to tell anybody that unless it is materially impacting the home. So what would be materially impacting the home? That would be if this was maybe gruesome, or if there was something that then has impacted the structure itself, like bullet holes or something like that, that could be potentially long-term damaging for the property. Now, if there was somebody who was simply passed on in the home, that's not required to be disclosed whatsoever. So the next thing that you might be surprised to hear about is kind of along those lines, ghosts or supernatural phenomenon, or paranormal phenomenon. So we've seen this in other states where basically paranormal phenomenon is actually required to be disclosed, and it can actually impact the property value positively or negatively. However, in Washington State, it is not required. Again, it does not materially impact the property. And I think in Washington, the belief is it's more like hearsay than anything. And then the last one that is not impacting the property value at all and is not required to be disclosed is whether or not there are sexual predators or people who are registered sex offenders as neighbors. Now, this is public information, so if that's something that you're curious about, you absolutely can find that out ahead of time. You can see, you can see who is living nearby, but it is not required to be disclosed. Now, I have experienced in the past clients who felt really strongly about disclosing, and so that is, of course, welcome. But with any of these things, they are not required to be discussed up front when purchasing a home. So if murders or ghost hauntings or sexual predators are important to you as a home buyer, obviously like they are for most people, it's information you may or may not be able to get, so just be aware of that as you're moving. Now, the next thing I wanted to talk about that is crazy is that Washington State does not follow the brokerage agreements like the rest of the nation does. So you may or may not have seen the recent NAR settlement that came out that talks about how realtors are interacting with their clients and talking about commissions, as well as offering commissions to potentially a buyer's agent if you are a listing agent. Now, nationwide, those rules are changing, but in Washington State, they are not changing for a couple of reasons. The first being that in Washington State, those rules have changed back in 2019 to provide more transparency and more clarity for everybody involved. Washington also does not have an MLS that is attached to NAR Realtors, and so those are completely separate entities, and it makes our MLS be able to create their own rules. Now, one of the things that is really cool about the Northwest MLS in Washington State is that we actually have now more transparency, more communication than the rest of the nation, where if a listing agent is having that conversation with their seller about offering a commission for a buyer's agent, that is discussed up front. It's published. Everybody's aware of it. There's no hiding things like now the rest of the nation is kind of starting to do. So in Washington State, realtors are still required to work with clients on a contractual basis. That means you can't just open a door for any random person. It's ultimately going to be you are hiring a professional to do the job of either selling or helping you buy a home. And that person is also going to be there as your confidant to make sure that you are comfortable through the entire process. You get all the information you possibly can get, and barring there's no ghost in the house, you're going to feel fully confident in the process and know everything you need to before you buy the house. If you have more questions about how Washington State could be different than the rest of the nation, reach out to me or leave a comment. I would love to get you answers on that.